How's it going, guys? Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast. Joining me, as he often does, in his Justin Herbert jersey, Nick Rice. We're going to break down some college football, some Big 12 news, which isn't even news anymore because we're a little late to the party on this. And then we'll talk some NFL. So, Nick, how's it going? I know it was a rough game for your Chargers, but I see you're still sporting the lightning bolts on your shoulders, so it can't be all bad.
I almost feel more pride after a game in which we committed 12 penalties and we had 2 turnovers, including one big interception late in the red zone. So I feel like I am a Charger fan because that was the perfect synopsis of a Charger football game, a game where we debut our home fans, the amount that just so happened to show up, and we gave them that sort of a dumpster fire. Close, and we showed some talent, but we made the big mistakes that cost us in the end. But anyways, love the Chargers. I'll rep them through and through.
I did meant to ask you, and we're kind of starting a little different than I had planned, but you bought season tickets. So were you not at this game? Did you not go?
I would have loved to go. This was the game I wanted to go more than anything, but I had a doubleheader for soccer I had to do yesterday.
True. Okay. So when do you plan to go next? What's the plan?
They host the Browns in week 6. So that is the game. And honestly, I feel like it kind of worked out because I believe that the Browns might be a better matchup. The Cowboys are such an explosive offense that we just could never get off the field. And while the Browns are pretty good too, I have my hopes that maybe we can win that game.
Nice,
At least maybe that's my emotions talking. But anyways, I'll be there in a couple weeks.
Nice. I actually have a friend and coworker that flew all the way to Vegas for the Raiders' first home game, that Monday night game. And he's supposed to come on one of these episodes here soon and share his experience of, his first time in the stadium and everything. So shout out to Anthony if you listen to these, because I'm going to have him on talk about that. And I look forward to, I know you've been to the stadium, but not for a game day atmosphere yet. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that'll be pretty cool once that happens. But before we get to NFL stuff, we are going to backtrack a little bit and talk some college football. And specifically, first, we're going to talk the Big 12 news, because the last time that we spoke, it was more talks about if the Big 12 goes away, where will these teams go? How's all that going to work out? Power 5 situations and all that. And since then, it's taken quite the flip of a script where not only is the Big 12 going to stick around, but you could argue that it might be a little better than ever, adding UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, and BYU. And obviously this means probably more to me than it does to Nick, but I do want to start with Nick. When you heard these schools, did any of them surprise you? And what do you think was this the best move for the Big 12?
No, I thought those were 4 great, strong decisions, probably the 4 most prominent athletically successful organizations in the American and in the running for the Big 12, with the exception of maybe a San Diego State or a Boise State. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, I'm sure you're thrilled about Central Florida, but just in general, the 4 teams that are going in there creates a lot of energy for the Big 12. And I think if not anything else, it's for the next couple of years, people are going to be intrigued once that transition happens in a couple of seasons to see the sort of changes. And if they are going to be prominent in the recruiting styles, I think this is a really, really great move by the Big 12. We were thinking that they might fold and they didn't, which was great.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, total flip of the script. And you mentioned we don't quite know when these moves are happening. A lot of paperwork says 2023. There's even a weird situation where these 4 teams could get added, and Texas and Oklahoma might stick around for like a year or 2 when they'll have this weird bloated 16-team league, or 12-team league at that point, 14, whatever it might be. Anyway, they too stay there for another year or 2 before they can get into the SEC. So all that remains to be seen. We're hearing 2023 and 2024, one of those years might be it. But yeah, I mean, as a UCF fan and former student and all that, it is groundbreaking. And it's, as the only school to ever play, D3, D2, Division I, FCS and FBS level, it's just another, prong on the ladder of the growth of this university and everything. And we are, very, hyped about it and everything. There's a lot of questions that remain to be answered, and it doesn't get in the way of, this season. Obviously, UCF suffered a big loss in more ways than one to Louisville this week, and Dylan Gabriel being injured. So we got a lot to focus on this year, but it's hard to not look ahead on what we know will be, Power 5, stuff that we used to have to battle against, and when they couldn't beat us, they got us to join us. So it's going to be nice to be on the other side of the fence when that does in fact happen. Out of the four, I agree. Houston made sense just because there's so many Texas teams in there. Cincinnati, much like UCF, has just been a power of late, and it makes sense to add them. And BYU makes sense to me, and it's almost like March Madness where you got the first four in, and you got the first four that didn't get in. And to me, the school you mentioned, Boise State or your Aztecs, Memphis was surprising, didn't get more love with this. I figured, it would add to basketball because you do have to think about Big 12 in basketball is one of the premier conferences in the country. So Memphis surprised me the most about not getting in. And there is rumors that they might do another round of this and maybe try to add a Boise. South Florida might get in just to complete that market of, UCF and USF and get that rivalry game back going. Because right now it is kind of up in the air. But out of all the teams that didn't get more reservations about this, was Memphis was surprising for me.
Yeah, they're a pretty strong program too. The Big 12 might turn their name into the Big 22 or something like that in short order, but it's the traveling conference now. You have West Virginia there and BYU in the same conference. So that is the one quandary, but bringing in a UCF, I mean, I know I figured, people joining the show were going to hear you really rave about UCF joining the Big 12. But to me, that made a lot of sense because if not anything else, the Big 12 could use a school in the state of Florida with just the amount of talent that's in that state. I mean, I worked at Bethune-Cookman, you work at Stetson, and obviously, you go to a lot of UCF games and you do plenty of work across the entire Central Florida region. The amount of talent in football is insane in the state of Florida. It's incredible. We're going to have Bethune-Cookman. We're getting the 2-star and the 3-star recruits in that school. And when they have the right coach, they are giving a lot of FBS schools a strong challenge. And they were nearly winning a lot of big time FBS, FCS matchups. So to think if UCF's getting 4-star and now potentially even 1 or 2 5-star guys a year with the move to the Big 12, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if they have too many 5-star recruits in the past, they're certainly going to have some now. That's really encouraging for their opportunities in the now.
Yeah, there's always been this weird, like you'll get a guy that is, shown as 5 stars on these websites. And then when he signs, it'll be like, 4-star wide receiver to UCF. It's like, did he lose his star based on where he signed or something? Like, it's
right.
Maybe that sort of stuff won't happen anymore. That would be great to see. And, people mention, is this new Big 12 any better than the American Conference the way it was or is? And I think, the way people talk about college football all the time is it comes down to money. And like, just to be quick about it, UCF gets $7 million a year through the American, whereas Big 12 schools get around 30. And with Oklahoma and Texas leaving, it might drop to closer to the 25 range, but you still go from making 7 to making 25. And then you're going to compete with schools that are used to getting 30 and are now getting 25. So it's going to put you in the running in that conference pretty easily when you're getting almost triple your budget, whereas these schools are used to dealing, with a 30% decrease of their budget. So like when money talks and you look at the raw numbers, that's really the big difference. Whether with all respect to Kansas basketball, they're the only easy football, spot on that schedule now. When you look at the West Virginias and other people that are going to be Oklahoma States and things like that, other than Kansas, there's not a lot of, in the American, we call them the 3 T's. Obviously, Tulsa's had our number, but aside from them, Tulane and Temple tend to be the schools that you can kind of just circle as a win on your schedule. There's not a lot of those in the Big 12. So there's definitely going to be, a growing pains when you get in there, but at least you are at the budget and will have the resources of these other schools, which we have not had to this point, and we've already made it this far.
Yeah. You brought it up earlier about Memphis not being in there. But my thoughts are on that with Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF, Florida, Ohio, and Texas. I believe that the Big 12 made an emphasis of bringing in schools from the big recruiting grounds in
Definitely.
America. Ohio is a top 6 or 7 state, I would say,
Mhm.
in terms of football talent. Memphis, Tennessee, not so much. And you can make an argument about BYU and Utah,
Yeah.
but just in general, I think the Big 12 believed we're going to bring in programs. Maybe they don't have quite the winning percentage of a Memphis or quite the winning percentage of a Boise State, but we're going to bring in schools that we know when we give them that huge pay increase that you talked about, they're going to have more of the resources to bring in these recruits at these incredible football states.
Definitely. And like I've had a lot of like healthy, I won't call them arguments, I will actually call them healthy discussions with people on, this is what BYU brings to the table, this is what Memphis would have brought to the table. And there's a lot of pros and cons. And money wise, BYU is just in its own stratosphere. It really is Notre Dame light, a lot of people call it, from its like corporate structure, because it's done so much stuff independently that it does make sense. I mean, had UCF beat Louisville and that was a close game, every one of these four, well, other than Houston, 3 of the 4 schools would be ranked, already in the big. You'd look at the Big 12 and you would see that. And obviously Houston, it would not take much to turn that around based on where they are. And like you said, the big recruiting ground that Texas would be. And we remember, wasn't that long ago, they beat Florida State in the Peach Bowl. Greg Ward was the quarterback. Like, they've won New Year's Six games in the very recent past. So all 4 of these schools, I think, are going to do a lot for the Big 12. And it's going to put them right up there. Like, they won't be, some people are considering it like it'll be the 5th in the Power 5. I see it no different than the way the Pac-12 might be. And everybody, we've mentioned it, ad nauseum before, the ACC tends to be Clemson and everybody else. And SEC is often Alabama and everybody else. And the Big 12 might be a little different. And there is not that one school and everybody else. Will just be one conference that has a lot of good competition amongst itself.
Yeah, it is interesting with these conferences growing all the time. These conferences that we call the Power 5 growing all the time. What is going to be the end, the cap? We can't have the Pac-10 turn to the Pac-12, turn to the Pac-20. When are we going to say, okay, and obviously, since there's no NCAA big time commissioner, somebody who makes the rules on the playoff, and somebody who we say that guy is the Roger Goodell of college football and he makes all the rules. I wonder when we're just going to say, look, we can't have a conference where in football only play half the teams that are in there because there's just too many teams. So I wonder when that cutoff's going to be. And the Big 12, it starts to feel like we're threatening and we're flirting with the edge. We're going to have to start making those decisions.
I agree. And if I had a vote, I would cap it right now, because as we stand right now, there are 69 Power 5 schools in football. And that just seems like a great place to leave it. And if you got to bump somebody out to put somebody else in, so be it. But let's just leave it right at 69. That way we can always get a laugh out of it.
Yeah, this is the show for kids. All right?
Absolutely. We range to a large audience of people, so I got to make sure I get my middle school jokes in as well.
Absolutely.
But so that's as much as we know about the Big 12. Obviously, it was big news, but now it's a lot of wait and see. The transition doesn't happen for, I think, like I said, the earliest would be 2023 as it stands right now. So big news, but a lot of wait and see on that. So aside from that, we will talk about actual football that we did see this week. I already mentioned, UCF's loss to Louisville, in what I would imagine, if you weren't a fan of either and just watched the game, was a great game to watch, because it was very back and forth, and there, the way it ended on the pick six and everything. If you weren't a fan of those schools and were just watching it for some good football, you definitely got some. So that was on was that Thursday? No, it was a Friday night game. And then we lead into Saturday games. Not a great look for the state of Florida. I guess I'll just start there. The Gator, I'll be honest, I did not watch this game. I'm sure you watched the Crimson Tide. Was this game as close as the score suggested, with Alabama winning 31-29 over the Gators?
Alabama jumped out to a 21-3 lead. So I would say probably not. Bryce Young looked pretty solid, but yeah, there was a lot of miscues late in the game. And ironically, it was the defense, which I can hear it right now. Tim Tebow he is just, I can hear him. He's right there behind my shoulder, man. He's just raving about Florida, how they hung in the game. And the final number is that Florida racked up 436 yards, over 100 more than Alabama. That defense, for some weird reason, couldn't make any late game stops, and the Gators were a missed 2-point conversion away from forcing overtime. So, quick answer, Alabama was not as sharp as they needed to be. And I'm sure on the eve of a Football Life that debuted Nick Saban documentary, make sure to check that out on NFL Films. It was a great watch. I learned a little bit about when he was in Cleveland as a DC and in Miami as a head coach. That was a pretty cool watch. Yeah, Alabama was pretty disappointing even in the win.
Yeah, and like you said, it was such a big lead to start, and Florida, managed to chip away at that, and there's definitely a situation where they could have, potentially stole this game, but obviously Alabama did enough to win, and for some Gator fans, this is a moral victory, and then for others, it's we're Florida, we don't have moral victories, we have regular victories. Talk about a school to jump out of Florida for a second. That probably feels like they have a moral victory. We kind of dunked on it, last episode, so we'll give them a little bit of credit here. Nebraska and Scott Frost hanging tough with Oklahoma, going down 23-16. Definitely a lot closer than anybody would have thought. That spread was 22.5 at kickoff. So, if you had money on the Huskers to cover, you maybe went out and had yourself a nice dinner that week or whatever. Miami loses to Michigan State at home. It was close for a while, ended up, double-digit victory for the Spartans. I mentioned it was a rough week for Florida. The only Division I Florida college football team that's still undefeated is none other than the Stetson Hatters. So if you had them as the last one standing, you probably made a lot of money on that. But Florida State, their woes continue, and what wasn't really that competitive against Wake Forest. I don't know what's going to happen there if Mike Norvell can weather the storm. It's great to see McKenzie Milton back on the field, but clearly this is not what he signed up for when he went over there with this line that can't block for him and this, that, and the other. But yeah, rough week for Florida. So as far as it goes with California schools, I know that the big buzz around there was UCLA losing definitely in an upset to Fresno State 40-37. I'm sure you caught some of that.
Yeah, Fresno State gained 570 yards. They just absolutely pushed them around. And one other story I'd like to mention too, before we just whip all the way around college football, I wanted to bring up Clemson, and they are the most disappointing team right now that's still towards the top of the leaderboards. They came in last week number 6 in America, so they still are, in many people's estimations, a playoff contender. The ACC, that still is not that strong of a league throughout most of it. So they certainly have a chance to win it, but their 14-8 win over Georgia Tech is surprising to me in the fact their quarterback, I actually got to see him a couple of times, DJ Uiagalelei, when he was in high school. He went to St. John Bosco just up the road, one of those St. Thomas Aquinas type schools where everybody knows, like, that's the power, some of the powerhouses in America. So he went there. He was a number 1 overall quarterback in 24/7 out of high school. He sat behind Trevor Lawrence for a year, and here he comes into the Lions Den, and he's been pretty disappointing. And it goes to show just how special Trevor Lawrence is. And Clemson, without him, they bring in another 5-star quarterback, and there's just nothing quite like Trevor Lawrence. And Dabo Swinney's really got a tough project on his hands to try and win this conference and get into the playoff.
Yeah, this Clemson Georgia Tech game, just looking at the score, you knew something was funky. I know they dealt with a weather delay of at least a few hours, and I know a thing or two about weather delays down here in Florida. So I don't know if that just threw everything off, and Georgia Tech maybe – I would used to say maybe Georgia Tech caught them off guard with the triple option, but they don't even run that anymore down there, so you can't use that as a reason. But you're right, they have not looked that impressive so far. They've not looked like the number 6 ranked team in the country, which is where they currently sit. But yeah, maybe they can, they had the rough loss, early on to Georgia, and they're trying to rebound from that still. Luckily for them, they're in, like you said, the ACC, which should be very winnable. Shouldn't be a lot of guys in the way of that. Miami is not as good as advertised. UNC's already lost a game. So yeah,
they don't even play Miami. So they have 0 ranked opponents to close out the season. 0.
Yeah. So you would think they would get the ball rolling and maybe potentially get into the playoffs still if that holds out. Cincinnati too had a pretty close game with Indiana, found a way to pull away. They are definitely the flag bearer of the Power Five, even though I don't know if you've seen this, Nick, but they are running out on the field with the Big 12 flag already. They have already the American, not the American flag, but the American Conference flag. That'd be messed up if they ditched the American flag. But to me, let's actually before I jump around a little too much, did you have any more to say on the UCLA side of things? Like, it looked like Chip Kelly was maybe finally figuring things out, and then this roadblock of Fresno State comes.
I don't have too much to say other than it seems like the moment that you can kind of wrap your arms around UCLA and trust them and believe in them after a huge win over LSU, it almost says more about LSU and just how cocky they came into that game. And I know that you loved it when UCLA backfired on Twitter afterwards and talked about exactly what Orgeron was saying.
That was good stuff. The sissy blue shirt, that was good stuff for sure.
So it almost says more about LSU and the fact that UCLA still, to me, is the stepchild to USC. We got to bring up that head coaching. I want to get to that.
I was going to go there next. I don't know if lives in the California area. What has this meant to the surrounding area? What are the rumors you're hearing? What's the overall vibe to USC firing their coach just 2 weeks into the season?
Everybody's talking about it. And now that UCLA lost to Fresno State, people in Southern California can literally put their laser focus on it. And people are pretty hot about it. You'll go on to USC women's basketball Twitter, and they'll be talking about a game-winning shot they had against somebody. And in the comments, it says, fire the head coach, fire Clay Helton. I already was starting to draw a blank on his name. Right. And it's hilarious. Everybody screamed to the defense of Clay Helton as soon as he got fired. First of all, I was like, where was this nice energy when he was around? And they would say how great of a guy he was. And I'm like, I heard that with Norv Turner of the Chargers. I heard that with Anthony Lynn of the Chargers. When you are told as a head coach, first and foremost, you're a great guy. Yeah. They don't like your coaching style. They don't think you're very good. And that was the case with Clay Helton. And, it showed when you're a huge favorite against Stanford and you lose by that much at home. It was time to go. It was time to go years ago, frankly. But I'm speaking of the people in Southern California here when I can say that Clay Helton, this was a couple of years too late, to be completely honest, but better late than never. And we're looking forward to going through the full recruiting process for a head coach this season.
Yeah, whenever you start, a conversation about somebody with he's a great guy, it's a lot like starting a conversation with all due respect. It has a 0%. Success rate on what you're really trying to get across there. So I don't know if there's obviously rumors about who the next coach might be, and it's always the same names, at least this early on in the season. I'm sure someone like Bob Stoops has come up and other people like that.
Yep.
But it almost talks about, like last time we spoke about, what might happen with Nebraska and how people in Nebraska still see it as a powerhouse. People around USC still see it as a powerhouse. But if you're a coach that might want to go there, what does that say to you about a guy who, I think he went 6-2 last year. He lost a game, like to move your entire life over there and to try to get the ship turned around, knowing that they could fire you in 8 games if you start, 3-5 for your first year. And USC has the money. It's not like the Florida State situation where maybe they already want to move on for Norvell, but they're still paying I already blanked on, Willie Taggart. They're still, they're in the middle of a coaching buyout already. USC, I'm sure they handled, the buyout here pretty easily, but it's self-awareness. So I think we talked about it last time. It's I know where your program was, but really think about where it is now. And, if you're going to hire someone, you have to give them a chance to sink or swim. You can't rip them out of the pool the second they start to go down even a little bit. Like you're already, as far as USC is concerned, this is basically rock bottom. So you can't go much farther down. You have to find someone that actually feels like they can turn it around, and you have to give them the time to do that. So I don't know who it's going to be, but I would think twice before taking a job like this if you're going to fire me after 2 weeks.
Yeah. Let me tell you right now, based on all the stuff you just said, the worst decision is Urban Meyer. Can I get an amen on that?
Amen.
And there's too much rumors about that. So to me, if I could have my choice if I could just pick anyone out of a hat that, clearly would be willing to go, to me, Eric Bieniemy is that guy. Chiefs offensive coordinator. He got passed over 2 years in a row for NFL head coaching jobs. Eric Bieniemy was fielding the questions, and he said, "My feet are entrenched here in Kansas City." He said it just a little bit differently, which
I remember because I've heard the phrase before. He says, "I am where my feet are," which I think is a
I am where my feet are,
which is the very most well said. He doesn't get to speak often, but he's a very well spoken man, and I think that's a good way to look at. Because what's he gonna like? If he's gonna go there, it's not gonna be till after the season. Right?
Exactly.
Like, he's not going to jump in the middle of maybe you got one more run at the Super Bowl with the Chiefs and then, maybe you move on, but it's not going to happen right now. Another guy that's in that rumor mill is Penn State head coach James Franklin. And that's another guy that, to me, the best game of the weekend for college football was Penn State's whiteout against Auburn. They beat them 28-20. And I don't know if you're James Franklin, how you can look at what Penn State is. They're 10th ranked in the country. I think they've even gone up after that win against Auburn. And they're one of the better teams in the country. I don't see how you could leave a job like Penn State for USC, especially not in the situation they're in now. It's just funny how these guys get brought up. And it's a self-awareness thing. Like, look at the job that he has. Why would he leave for USC currently? This isn't the USC of 15 years ago.
Exactly. And again, I watched that Football Life earlier today, and Nick Saban bounced around Michigan State, LSU, Alabama. He made it all work because he's the greatest coach arguably in the history of college football. But outside of that, when you make moves like that, I mean, you just brought up Scott Frost. It's very difficult to win one place. Winning in two places is practically impossible unless you're Nick Saban. So I would strongly suggest, if I'm USC, going to the NFL and grabbing a coordinator, grabbing somebody who has proven to have a track record. I would be worried about bringing in like the coach of Fresno State or the coach of like a really, really good team that's not in that Pac-12, not in that SEC. I would be very concerned about that because USC is a little different. And the fact that, you're going to have much more limelight than if you become the head coach of like an Oregon or something like that. So you got to bring in a guy that has that charisma of a Pete Carroll, has the personality, who's going to be able to handle the pressure of having to deal with and 3 or 4 times the amount of media members as the average school at a USC versus somewhere else.
And a lot of these schools will look for maybe a former player or a former player that has become a coach.
Deion Sanders has come up too, which to me, I don't think he has enough experience.
Yeah, that's come up for Florida State as well. But where I was going with this is Lynn Swann was the athletic director there a year or two ago, and they even convinced him to step down when things weren't going great. So they don't even have loyalty amongst former players or former people of that program. So I don't think they're necessarily even going to go that route. But Eric Bieniemy, they mentioned, is like a Southern California guy, which frankly I don't know what that means. Everybody in football has spent some form of time in California, whether they were born there or they took a job there at some point. But like, I don't know, a Southern California guy isn't the same as Scott Frost going, because he's a Nebraska guy or something like that. But
he didn't go to school at USC. He just was born there.
Exactly. So I don't know if that really, and it still could work out well. And, UCLA is, no matter what they do, they could win 3 national championships in a row. That city will never be a UCLA town. It'll always be the second tier team. I think you can back me up on this. No matter what UCLA does, it's always going to be a USC town.
Yeah, for sure. This is a huge moment for the Trojans. Just ask a lot of people in the media, but to me, I would like to pipe down the expectations that USC is one big time coach away from becoming what they were before, because this is an NCAA landscape right now, which is dominated by some great coaches. And I would just be skeptical that they would be able to compete. Yes, they can be a whole lot better than they are, but Nick Saban is still around. Dabo Swinney is still around. Even James Franklin, you mentioned. Ryan Day is not too bad, not too shabby either. So I would be skeptical about whether or not they're just a coach away from being a national championship contender.
Yeah, I'll sound like a broken record here, but a little self-awareness just goes a long way with a lot of with any school, really any program. But these, historically blue blood, whatever term you want to use, I understand where you've been, but look where you are. Be where your feet are, some might say, and then take it from there. And that's what USC needs to do. Like you said, they're not one move away from dominance again. There are several moves away, and it's about getting that first step right, I think.
And wait until Brady Hoke leaves San Diego State and doesn't take away some of your Southern California recruits. Then maybe you can start being in that national conversation.
Or even some, Minnesota isn't doing as well this year as maybe it's someone like Phil Fleck out of Minnesota. They'll reach for anything,
Right.
any quick fix they think they can find, and there is no quick fix. It's a matter of finding someone that will do the job and the amount of time it takes, and giving him enough time to do that.
Absolutely.
But guys, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we get back, we're gonna talk about the Week 2 action of the NFL season. So stick around. All right, guys, we're back here to talk some NFL action. By the way, it is pouring outside my window right now. Nick claims he can't hear it, so hopefully you guys can't either. So if you hear like a random crash, it's the lightning outside my window. But hopefully you guys don't hear that.
Phil's soothing voice over the rain clouds of Central Florida. Wow.
It'll just put you to sleep. I mean, some may claim the show does that to people anyway, but hopefully that's not the case for everybody.
That's right.
We'll talk some NFL here. We'll start with my Eagles just because it is my show after all. After an impressive Week 1 win over what I will still consider a bad Falcons team, right? Everyone was telling me, because everyone knows I'm not on the Jalen Hurts wagon quite yet. And everyone, people are telling me, hey, did you see this game? Like, you're ready to change your tune? I'm like, not ready to change. I want to be wrong too. I want to make this abundantly clear. I want to be wrong about Jalen Hurts. I don't think he's the guy, and nothing will make me happier to find out that he is the guy. I want to make that abundantly clear. I just don't see it yet. And Week 1 was great. It was kind of an ugly first half, and they kind of grinded it out. And then, the score is a little misleading, but they did what they needed, and they took out a Falcons team that, frankly, they should have won. And then they kind of come down to earth in this game here against the 49ers, a banged up 49ers team, by the way. Shout out to Raheem Mostert, speedy recovery for him. But, banged up team. They were on their fourth or fifth string running back by the end of this Eagles game. We only put up 3 points, and while we're not turning the ball over left and right or anything, it was just we ended up scoring at the end. 17-11 was the final score. And anytime you see a score like that, things are a little out there when you score 11 points of all things.
Yeah.
But we did have one big touchdown that was called back because Rager ran out of bounds, and then he ran back in bounds, and that's why he was so wide open. So things could have gone even if you win this game, you weren't going to look impressive. So for the people that thought, we were just going to come out like gangbusters after that Week 1 win, this definitely brings us down to earth a little bit, and to show that it's not going to be an easy year. And again, Jalen didn't turn the ball over a bunch. He did miss a bunch of throws though, which everyone does it at some point or another. So again, I'm not going to dunk on the guy, but this definitely, are we this team, or are we the team that showed up, in Week 1, and not to be lazy, but it probably is somewhere in the middle. I don't think we're going to be this bad every week, but we're not going to look like we did against the Falcons every week either. So the jury's still out. I just did want to put out there that people were ready to take me out because of how good they played in Week 1. And now we're back to this, and maybe we'll settle somewhere in the middle. That's where I'm on with my birds so far.
I think after Atlanta's poor performance yesterday, I think we can start to establish, I know it's only 2 games, but we can start to establish the Falcons, who were bad last year, are going to be bad again this year. Kyle Pitts looks awesome, but that's about it. So Matt Ryan looks like he's regressed now in 36 years old. So, that's what most quarterbacks are at 36, with the exception of Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. So the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, I was a little bit higher than you on Jalen Hurts coming out. Maybe that was that Alabama.
That's 100% what it was. So
Alabama bias. I feel like I was partially wrong. And like you said, I'm sure you would love to have me be right in this situation, but he just does not look like the guy quite yet. I know he's still
Herbert
young.
Situation when you guys drafted Herbert, you weren't crazy about it, but you are much happier that you were incorrect about that.
Exactly.
Than you ever would have been if you're like, see, this guy's a bum. And I'm not even taking it that far yet. But speaking of Alabama quarterbacks, I'm going to gloss over a couple games here that don't have that much talking points, but the Bills absolutely smacked the Dolphins in the mouth, and Tua actually gets injured in this game. This was, I'm someone who's pretty high on the Bills this year. losing week 1 was definitely a stumbling block with that, but they were firing on all cylinders here against this Dolphins team that also had, probably wild card, aspirations for this year. And I don't know how hurt Tua is and if he's the guy or whatever, but the Bills looked like we expected them to be in this game. And the Dolphins, whenever you put up 0 points, first time the Bills have shut out the Dolphins since 1966. Keep in mind they play twice a year every year. So it has been a long time since the game.
That's almost 100 games. That might be 100 games. But by the way, Miami, I thought was overrated coming into the year. Brian Flores, my gosh, he's the greatest coach since Don Shula for the Miami Dolphins. But I'm telling you, I think this is a year where they're going to be 500 club, maybe even lower than that. They're just not good enough. And Xavier and Howard coming into the year talking the way he did, look at Miami as being one of the bigger drop-off teams in the NFL. I'm telling you right now.
I could definitely see that. Another game that probably only take a minute on here. The Browns and Texans was a little too close than anyone expected here. And then, Tyrod Taylor was looking like Tyrod Taylor could potentially look for the Texans here in the first half. And just the bad luck of this guy, man, it gets hurt again. They had to put another guy in and the Browns pull ahead and they win 31-21. But he really had something going with this Houston team. And I don't know if he's, he didn't get his lung punctured or anything, so he might be back in the future. I don't know how bad the injury is here. But just I'm be honest, this year, I'm kind of just watching Red Zone. I just put on Red Zone and I just absorb every game. That's just how I'm watching football this year instead of, sitting in front of one game. And this game kept coming up because points kept getting scored and Tyrod kept getting first downs. And, the Browns came back a little bit too, but Cleveland again, after a disappointing week 1 against the Chiefs. So, no harm losing to the Chiefs, but to get in the win column, would you see the Browns, somewhere near where they were last year? Do you see them going up or down? Where are you on Cleveland?
Yeah, right around the same.
Yeah.
Tyrod Taylor, looked great. 10 for 11, 125 yards, a touchdown that gets hurt. So typical Tyrod Taylor, love him. I think he deserves another chance because he's just that good. Feel the same way about Teddy Bridgewater too. Hopefully he's going to play great this year. But yeah, Cleveland's right around there. I think Baltimore still wins the division. I was a little higher on the Ravens coming into the year than you do, and I'm feeling very great about my Ravens dark horse Super Bowl team floating in there after they beat the Chiefs.
I'll mention again, I don't know how bad the injury is for Tyrod Taylor, and obviously we don't know anything about the Deshaun Watson situation for Houston. So assuming he can get healthy, there's no reason he's not going to be their guy for this year and maybe into next year, because he's a total pro. You're going to never have any issues with him other than his health. And, even if they got to draft somebody next year, he will be that transition guy. So assuming he can get healthy, I think he's going to be the guy for Houston here for a little bit. You mentioned dark horse with your Ravens. I mean, we'll talk about that great Sunday night game here. We'll probably close with that because that did close out the week. My dark horse team, the Bills aren't really a dark horse. I think we know how good they can be. And normally I'm the guy that has to pump the brakes on this team, but I'm all in on the Rams this year. I thought they were quarterback. Yeah. I didn't like Jared Goff. I never thought he was going to be he got to Super Bowl, so, he can say that. But to the upgrade of Goff to Stafford to me is just like, he's never gotten to play on a team with this much talent. Like Deshaun Jackson's your 4th string wide receiver. Like there's just talent all over this team. And, I watched that Colts game and Carson Wentz again. Didn't look bad, but didn't do nearly enough to win this game, even though the game did get, rather close. He gets injured too. I don't know how bad that is, if he'll be there next week or whatever. And that, as an Eagles fan, the more he plays, the better chance that 2nd round pick becomes a 1st round pick. So you have to constantly keep that in mind too when you're an Eagles fan. But no, this Rams team, I was very impressed with. Matthew Stafford looks like he's been playing there for years. The running game is coming together with Darrell Henderson and other guys. Cooper Kupp is, the most productive he's been. I would have loved to get that guy in fantasy. You mentioned Atlanta. I do have Kyle Pitts, and so week 1 a little meh. Week 2 he's definitely picked up a bit. But he's just Stafford has found Cooper Kupp. He had 9 catches for 163 yards and 2 touchdowns this week. The Rams are going to roll, and I'm all in on them. I'm usually the guy that has to calm people down on the Rams, but I'm all in on them. And they're my dark horse in the NFC. And the Bills are the dark horse in the AFC for me, which, again, the Bills, I think we expect whatever they're going to be. But the Rams, I'm all in on.
I'm calling for the NFL to start doing flex Sunday Night Football immediately, because the fact that we have the Packers and Niners, two teams that have been so underwhelming on Sunday Night Football, and we got the Bucks 2-0 and the Rams 2-0 on just a regular 125 kickoff game, totally infuriates me because that would be an amazing game to watch. But that is the game. I think Los Angeles has been better than I thought since the media was fawning over Stafford and all them as a Super Bowl dark horse. But I'm starting to buy that hype, but I don't want to buy it quite yet. I want to see how they play against Tampa next week, but they look really good so far.
Another team that's been pretty surprising here, and they picked up a win against Pittsburgh this week. The Las Vegas Raiders, after that really entertaining game in week 1, kind of got to flex their muscles a little bit. This is a game that they normally would have lost, I think, and the Raiders, finally win this. Derek Carr looks really good 2 weeks into the season. Some people are, they have him as like a dark horse MVP candidate. I'm not quite ready for that yet, but if he keeps this up, you can't really keep him out of that conversation. But the Raiders, who had them at 2-0 to start the year?
Yeah. 28 for 37, 382 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's probably going to be the offensive player of the week in the NFL. Right. But wake me up when I'm done with my Thanksgiving post-dinner nap, because every time I overeat, too much turkey, too much stuffing, and I got to fall asleep at like 4 p.m. because for some weird reason, we always have dinner at like 2:30.
Yeah.
But anyways, that is when the Raiders face their worst football of the season. They always come out to a hot start. They were 6-2 last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then they finished 8-8. So wake me up when Vegas starts playing in those cold games, starts playing against the Chargers a couple of times and the Chiefs a couple of times. Great wins against the Ravens and Steelers, but wake me up at that moment, because that seems to be when they really fall off a cliff. And I'm still skeptical about John Gruden and all that, but what a quarterback this guy is. And he's really proven to a lot of people that Derek Carr should be talked about as one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And it seems like he never does.
Talking about falling off a cliff, thanks for that segue there. In the week 1 game against Green Bay, the Saints just dismantled the Packers in Jacksonville. So my sister and brother-in-law are Packers fans. So when the game got moved to Jacksonville randomly, they saw it as the opportunity to go see the Packers live, as any Packers fan would. They had fun until about kickoff, because we all know how that game went. And, everyone was all on board on the Saints and Jameis Winston. Sean Payton's going to fix him. And I hope that does happen, because I'm a fan of Jameis Winston, have been since his Florida State days. But the Panthers just rolled him here. Probably Sam Darnold's best game as a pro. Can I take it that far? Like they really did. They look.
Whoa, man. Let me look at all of his 400-yard, 4-touchdown passing performances, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I don't know. This game made them look at Christian McCaffrey. He came out a couple times because he's banged up, because he is their entire offense. But he made some good throws, and it made the Panthers look good here, 26-7. The Saints have to come off that perch a little bit, and we'll see, how they rebound. They have a big win followed by a big loss, so they're probably right where they should be anyway. So it's just a matter of, I don't think any of these teams are really relevant. I mean, I think we know the Bucs are going to take the South, assuming nothing bad happens to, the star players on that team. Maybe one of these other South teams could vie for a wild card spot, but that I think that would be the most for any of these guys.
Exactly. I agree with that sentiment for now, but watch out for Matt Rule and the Panthers in the next couple of years. This guy is starting to create a strong culture there. I don't know if Sam Darnold could be the long-term quarterback. I know he's played really good the first to the season, but I think Matt Rule is starting to develop something there in Carolina. It's really early, but he last year, the Panthers were a strong team. They were a tough out for a lot of guys late in the year, and then they come out this season with a terrific performance. When have we seen Sean Payton outcoached that hard in a game against a guy like, outside of Andy Reid or Bill Belichick? So watch out for the Panthers, not this season, but watch out for him once Matt Rule gets a couple more of his guys in the locker room.
You also mentioned, someone you want to see have success was Teddy Bridgewater, and the Broncos came through with not a pretty dominant win or anything, but they take out the Jaguars. They beat them by 10. They're also 2-0. The Urban Meyer era in Jacksonville has not, the honeymoon phase is already over with, Trevor Lawrence. He's made a couple, and then the USC rumors don't help, of course. But, Jacksonville, holding another thing aside, we'll probably have to talk about them another time when we know what's going on there. But the Broncos are 2-0 so far. I don't know how good they actually are. Teddy Bridgewater has played pretty well, but it's good to be 2-0 before you even really know what kind of team you are.
Yeah, Drew Locke had not only just a humiliating season, in my opinion, last year, but then he loses the job throughout the preseason to Teddy Bridgewater. And it was almost infuriating me that he goes to the media and is just like dumbfounded and is like, I believe I won this job. And I'm like, do you know who Teddy Bridgewater is? Before that injury, he was such a legit quarterback. And he played at Louisville, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So before Lamar Jackson. So he had a terrific college career, turned that to the NFL, horrific injury in Minnesota, but he's good enough where he'll be able to bounce back. And, I'm really rooting for the Broncos. Even as a Charger fan, I'm rooting for Teddy Bridgewater to be successful there in Denver, and I believe he will.
Yes, he's an extremely likable guy, definitely someone you wanted to see bounce back, from that injury. There's not a lot of people that don't, look at him with high praise. You mentioned, formerly of the Vikings. The Vikings might be the best 0-2 team in the league as they lose a heartbreaker to Arizona yesterday on the missed. Stop me if you've heard this one before, but the Vikings lose a game on a missed field goal.
And their radio announcer, Paul Allen, he was screaming because he was saying, oh, they made the field goal and won the game. And then it got viral. Check out Twitter.
Yeah, I saw that tweet. I haven't watched the video yet because it just seems like it's going to be painful to listen to. But
it was painful. It was painful.
So, they're 0-2, and luckily, the Packers, 0-2 normally would bury you in this division, but, the Packers have not played great. They played tonight against the Lions as we're recording this, so everybody enjoy that one. Maybe the Packers can.
Yuck.
If you have a bad game against the Saints like the Packers did, nothing. It's just what the doctor ordered when you get to play the Lions on like prime time. So that might be what they need to turn it around, but we'll see tonight. But what do you have any talk on Arizona? They're 2-0. There's a lot of hype on them. They got AJ Green and everything, and they're a team that
JJ Watt.
Yeah, JJ Watt, and like, do you see them making noise, moving forward?
We'll see. I mean, San Francisco, and to me, a little bit worse than I thought. No offense to your Eagles, but even in the win, I wasn't overly impressed.
Right.
But still legit. They're still a Super Bowl dark horse team. The Rams are too. So I think Arizona could be looking at. I never buy the fact that even in the expanded playoff that all four teams could make it in the NFC West. I think you got to be three. You got to be at least top three. And I think Arizona, if they play the right way against the right teams, they could finish third. And I think that'll be good enough for a playoff spot. But they looked great last year, crumbled down the stretch. We'll see if Cliff Kingsbury has what it takes to bring them over the hump this time. Yeah,
definitely. And this is a make or break year for them. I think they decide what direction. Oh, sorry about that.
Listening to Paul Allen down there.
Yeah, I guess I was pulling up the Chargers Cowboy stats for the next game we talk about here. But yeah, no, Arizona.
All right.
They're at a breaking point here where, they're either going to go up, 2-0 is a great start, see if they can get that momentum, or are they going to kind of fizzle out like last year? They had that Hail Mary against Buffalo. Everybody was high on Arizona, and then they just kind of, walked away from there. So we'll see how they go from there. But yeah, the game that I'm sure you've been wanting to talk about, that's why you wore the jersey and all. The Chargers lose a tough one to the Cowboys, 20-17. Very entertaining game. Again, I watched Red Zone all yesterday. They could not stop cutting to this game because every 2 minutes something was happening. And while I'm looking at Prescott's stats, didn't throw a lot of incompletions, didn't throw any touchdowns, threw a pick, was sacked twice, QBR of 42. Did not play great on the ground. However, Tony Pollard with 100 yards, Zeke with another 71, both scoring touchdowns. They definitely relied on the ground game here. I'm sure you watched this game, closer than I did. What are your thoughts for both ends here on what was while it was low scoring, was a very entertaining game?
He's only in his second NFL season, but this guy whose jersey I'm wearing, he already has 2 games of completing at least 15 consecutive passes. And he already has so many terrific moments. You just look at him. He even has the same cadences as Phillip Rivers. So I'm sure that he had a lot of conversation with him over the course of, the first off season that they were together before Phillip Rivers was bolted to the Colts. So I love the future of Justin Herbert, but it's just the same old dang Chargers, man. 12 penalties, 99 yards, 2 crucial turnovers. Yes, there was an egregious penalty where Herbert's running like 25 yards the wrong way. You could see it happening, in the moment. And Micah Parsons gets the sack on what was not really even a sack. He threw the ball away, but they ruled he was going backwards when he was wrapped up. Just to me, it's a frustrating call, but to me, it's a great moment for Justin Herbert to learn to start this season. But I came into the year skeptical of the Brandon Staley hire, even though he led the best defense in the NFL with the Rams as coordinator last season. I was skeptical, and so far, this team looks a lot like what they looked last year with Anthony Lynn. We'll see. He's in his first season, but we'll see. A lot of mistakes in that game.
Yeah, really the story of the Chargers last year was they lost a lot of close games. And like you said, this is a little bit more of the same. Hopefully they can learn from this one. And, Justin Herbert clearly is the guy of the future. And it's just a matter of who they can get around him and everything. We closed the night out with a super entertaining. It happened again. Stop it. Okay. We closed the night out with a super entertaining game. The Ravens come all the way back to beat the Chiefs 36-35. Before we talk about anything in this game, any stat, anything, I want to talk about Lamar Jackson's front flip into the end zone and like how it was the most awkward thing ever. And there was still like 3 minutes left in the game. And they, it wasn't the walk-off flip into the end zone. I kept seeing a picture of him upside down because I missed the moment that he scored. And I'm like, did he get hit? And I don't see the defender, but how weird is that, flip into the end zone for you? Because that just threw me off completely while watching it.
Yeah, a little weird. I actually didn't get to see the game live, so I assume that was the walk-off touchdown.
No, I mean, technically it was, but there was like 3 minutes left in the game still. So it's not like, and the Chiefs, I don't know if they just kind of sleptwalked through. Lamar had never beaten the Chiefs up till this point. He's like 0-3 all time. And then he, pulls this one off. It looked like more of the same. I had Pat Mahomes in one fantasy league. I had who else did I have? Guys played well on the Chiefs, but when you lose by 1 point, it could easily go either way. They're outscored 12-0 in the fourth quarter. That has a lot to do with it. I feel like the Ravens didn't want to be 0-2, obviously, and the Chiefs losing one game, other than Nick Wright's prediction of them going 20-0. Doesn't matter as much to them. So, but I do think this was a big win for the Ravens.
For sure. Too early to judge the Chiefs on this game. I mean, you're not going to go 17-0 in the regular season,
right?
Unless you're the Patriots in one special season. And even then, they very easily could have been 13-3. And I'm sure that with that. I believe AJ Feely was the quarterback in that game in 2007. Yep. Such a great game. Philly and New England, Baltimore Giants, they all gave them
that whole stretch down the way.
Yeah, that was such an awesome season for them. But anyways, so I think the Chiefs are going to be just fine. Even in the loss, Mahomes looked great. Hill was strong. So we'll see how things go, but I believe the Chiefs will bounce back.
Yeah, I don't see this as big of an issue. Them being 1-1 doesn't seem to be an issue, but if the Ravens were 0-2, that would have been an issue for Baltimore and their fans. Lamar, did not play great early, did enough late in the game to get the win, but it really just every time these teams play, it just seems to be fireworks. It reminds me too of like the Rams Chiefs game on Monday Night Football or Sunday night, whatever it was. Just a lot of that, a lot of the young guys in the league. There's only so many of these older pros left, like Brady, Breeze is now gone, Rivers is gone, and when these younger guys get a chance to shine, it's a lot of fun, and the league's in good hands moving forward.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson, man. So for 1 year, we fawn over Tim Tebow when he goes on that 6 or 7 game winning streak. It's like, wow, he's the greatest winner in the history of the NFL. Lamar Jackson's been winning over 80% of his games since he joined the NFL. And while he had a couple of flameouts in the playoffs, he is still one of the best quarterbacks that we have in the NFL right now. He's not like top 2 or 3, but he's still really, really solid. And I would love to have him over a lot of other quarterbacks. Shout out Louisville, quarterback factory out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Was it Malik Cunningham who played even this week? Looks super explosive. He got a little banged up in this game, but Yeah, Louisville, low key is making a lot of quarterbacks there. Lamar, I think it's what you said. Nobody has a problem with him in the regular season. It's all his trip ups in the playoffs that he hopes to get right or whatever. But you've now mentioned Tebow twice on one show, and that's what the limit is, one. So that I'm going to detract from the next time you're on. You can't mention him at all. All right.
Wait, sorry. What'd you say there?
I say you mentioned Tebow twice in the same.
Oh, gotcha.
And you only get to do it once, so I now have to detract from the next time you're on. I do make the rules, but those are the rules. But,
Tebow must have come. That guy must have come into our video stream because he cut out that part of it.
Yeah.
He's everywhere, man. Even years after the NFL, he's still.
He was. I did catch the beginning of the Florida Bama game, and I think he was out at the game because it was in Florida or whatever. So he was there and watched that game live or whatever. But we're pretty much caught up here on the week, guys. I look forward to more college football. The UCF's on a bye, so probably a good time for it. They can kind of lick their wounds after the loss to Louisville, and they start conference play the week after at Navy. And then we just have more NFL action. So I want to thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time.